He sat down quietly at the far end of the restaurant, dressed in a plain dark shirt and jeans, nothing flashy, nothing that drew attention. For most people in the room, he could have been just another man stopping in for a quick meal. The truth, though, was that the man taking his seat was Jason Statham, one of Hollywood's most recognizable action stars. But that night, there was no red carpet, no cameras, no entourage following him. Just him, tired from a long day, looking for a simple plate of food in peace. The waiter approached, his posture already dripping with a kind of smugness. He glanced at the menu Jason was holding, then at Jason himself, as if trying to size him up. Jason raised his eyes, gave a polite nod, and asked for something most customers didn't bother ordering in such a place. He didn't want the overpriced steak or the carefully plated seafood that cost more for the presentation than the taste. He asked for a basic sandwich and a glass of water. The kind of order that sounded almost out of place in a fine dining establishment. The waiter's lips curled in a smirk he didn't bother to hide. "That's it," he said, almost laughing. "Just the cheapest thing on the menu? You sure you're in the right place?" Jason didn't flinch. He just nodded, calm and composed, repeating his order without a trace of embarrassment. But the waiter wasn't done. He leaned closer and, in a tone loud enough for a couple of nearby tables to hear, muttered, "Most people come here for the experience. Guess not everyone can afford it." A few soft chuckles rose from the corner of the room where a group of young professionals were sipping cocktails, clearly entertained by the exchange. Inside, Jason could feel the sting of disrespect, but he wasn't the kind of man to react with anger. He'd grown up in working-class England, where a cheap meal wasn't a sign of poverty, but of practicality. He remembered his childhood vividly, the markets where his parents stretched every coin, the modest meals that filled their plates. Money had never defined him, and it wasn't about to now. Still, there was something unsettling about the way the waiter's arrogance filled the air, a cruelty aimed at belittling someone he assumed wasn't important. Jason leaned back, giving a small smile, as if to say, "You'll see soon enough." The waiter returned with the plate, setting it down with an almost theatrical flourish of disdain. He didn't bother hiding his smirk, convinced that he had put this stranger in his place. Jason thanked him anyway, his tone sincere, his manners intact. He ate slowly, each bite deliberate, ignoring the whispers from the corner table that occasionally drifted toward him. It wasn't long before another customer entered the restaurant, a businessman in a crisp suit who immediately recognized Jason. His eyes widened, and he almost tripped over himself rushing to greet him. "Mr. Statham. I can't believe it's really you. I'm such a huge fan." His voice carried through the restaurant, silencing the small pockets of laughter that had followed Jason earlier. The waiter's face turned pale. He froze in place as he realized who he had been mocking. This wasn't just another diner looking to save a few pounds. This was Jason Statham, a man who could have bought the entire restaurant 10 times over if he wanted, a man who had built a career on discipline, respect, and a no-nonsense attitude that millions admired. The businessman, still grinning ear to ear, asked for a photo. Jason stood politely, shook his hand, and posed for a quick picture, never letting a flicker of annoyance show. He was gracious, kind, and humble, even in the face of a waiter who had spent the evening treating him with contempt. The rest of the room buzzed with recognition. Phones discreetly appeared as diners whispered to each other, shocked at who was sitting quietly in their midst. The same people who had laughed earlier now stared with wide eyes, realizing they had witnessed something they would never forget. Jason sat back down, finished his simple meal, and asked for the bill. The waiter, now trembling slightly, brought it over with an apology spilling from his lips. I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't recognize you. I didn't mean any disrespect." Jason looked up at him calmly, his voice low but firm. "Respect shouldn't depend on who someone is. You never know who you're talking to, or what they've been through." The words struck the waiter harder than any outburst could have. There was no shouting, no grand show of anger, just quiet truth. Jason pulled out his card, paid the bill, and even left a generous tip on the table. Not because the service deserved it, but because he wanted to leave behind a lesson the waiter would never forget. When he walked out, the entire restaurant seemed to shift. Those who had laughed at him now looked ashamed. The waiter stood frozen, his earlier arrogance washed away by the weight of what had just happened. Jason Statham had shown him something more powerful than fame or wealth. He had shown him dignity, humility, and the kind of strength that doesn't need to be loud to be respected. That night, the story spread beyond those walls. Diners told their friends, photos circulated quietly online, and the tale of a waiter mocking Jason Statham for ordering cheap food became something bigger. Not just a funny anecdote, but a reminder that you should never judge someone by appearances, or by the price of the meal they choose. Because the man sitting alone in the corner, eating a simple sandwich, might just be someone whose presence could humble an entire room without ever raising his voice. And that's exactly what Jason Statham did.